The ruined city stretched for miles, its once great towers now crumbling skeletons of steel and stone. Smoke still rose from the distant battlegrounds, mixing with the scent of ash and metal. It had been 3 months since the war ended, but the scars remained. Ethan Vance, a former soldier turned scavenger, knew that better than anyone. He moved carefully through the wreckage, his boots crunching against the rubble. His rifle was slung over his shoulder, but he didn't expect trouble. The war was over. The enemy was either dead or had fled the planet. Still, caution had kept him alive for this long. Ethan stopped near the remains of an old marketplace. A few rusted stalls still stood, their goods long stolen or burned away. As he searched through a pile of broken crates, hoping for something useful, a faint noise made him freeze. It was soft, a rustling sound, like someone shifting through the debris. Ethan narrowed his eyes and gripped his knife. He was not alone. Slowly, he turned his head and saw a shadow move behind a collapsed wall. His heartbeat quickened. A survivor, a scavenger, or something worse. He took a cautious step forward, his muscles tense. "I know you're there," he called out. His voice echoed in the empty street. "Come out. I won't hurt you." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then the figure stepped into the dim light. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. It was a woman, but not human. Her skin was violet, smooth but marked with dirt and bruises. Her long, dark hair was tangled, her silver eyes dull with exhaustion. She wore torn, blood-stained clothing, and her bare feet were scraped and bleeding. She looked like she had been running for a long time. HFY. Ethan's grip on the knife tightened. His first instinct was to be cautious. The HFY had been humanity's enemies, the reason this planet was now a graveyard. He had fought against them, watched his comrades die because of them. But then he looked closer. She was trembling. Her arms were wrapped around her thin body as if trying to hold herself together. Her ribs were visible beneath her torn clothes. She looked weak. She looked starving. Ethan cursed under his breath. He had seen enough people on the brink of death to know she wouldn't last much longer. She stared at him, her silver eyes full of fear, her hands curled into fists, as if she expected him to attack. Ethan slowly pulled off his backpack and reached inside. The woman flinched at the movement, taking a step back. "Relax," he said, his voice softer now. "I'm not gonna hurt you." He pulled out a protein bar and unwrapped it. Then, keeping his movement slow, he extended it toward her. For a long moment, she didn't move. Her eyes darted between him and the food, full of suspicion. Ethan sighed. "Look, you don't have to trust me, but you need to eat." He placed the protein bar on a flat piece of rubble and took a step back. "Take it." She hesitated. Then, hunger won over fear. She snatched the bar and took a small, cautious bite. The moment the food touched her tongue, something in her face changed. Her eyes widened, and she let out a soft, choked sound, a mix between a sob and a gasp. She collapsed to her knees, her hands shaking. Tears rolled down her dirty cheeks as she took another bite, chewing slowly, as if she couldn't believe the food was real. Ethan watched in silence. He had expected her to be grateful, maybe even relieved. But this was something else. She was crying, not just from hunger, from something deeper. For the first time, Ethan wondered, how long had she been like this? How long had she suffered alone? He sighed and crouched down beside her, though he kept his distance. "What's your name?" he asked. She swallowed and wiped at her tears with the back of her hand. Her voice was hoarse when she spoke. "Sira," she whispered. "Sira," he repeated. "All right, Sira, let's get you out of here." She stiffened, her eyes filling with fresh fear. She probably thought he was taking her prisoner. Ethan ran a hand through his messy hair. "Look, I don't know what happened to you. And honestly, I don't care about the war anymore, but you're gonna die if you stay out here alone." Sarah didn't reply. She only stared at him, her expression unreadable. Ethan exhaled. shaking his head. "Your choice," he muttered. "But if you want to live, come with me." He stood up and turned away, walking toward the shelter he had been using for the past few weeks. He didn't look back. If she wanted to follow, she would. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then he heard soft footsteps behind him. She was following. Ethan allowed himself a small, tired smile. Maybe, just maybe, this war wasn't over yet. Ethan led the way through the ruins, his steps steady, his mind racing. He could hear Sarah's footsteps behind him, light, hesitant, but there. She was still following. Good. The sun had started to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of red and orange. The night would be cold. Too cold for someone as weak as her to survive out in the open. After a few more turns through the ruined streets, they reached Ethan's hideout, a small underground shelter hidden beneath the remains of an old supply building. He pulled away the metal sheet covering the entrance and gestured for Sarah to follow. She hesitated at the edge, her silver eyes flicking between him and the dark space below. Ethan sighed. "It's safe," he said. "No traps, no tricks, just shelter." Still, she didn't move. Ethan rolled his eyes. "Look, if I wanted to hurt you, I wouldn't have given you food." He pointed to the darkening sky. "It's gonna be freezing soon. You stay out here, you die. Your choice." For a long moment, Sarah said nothing. Then, without a word, she stepped forward and climbed down into the shelter. Ethan followed, pulling the metal sheet back into place before lighting a small battery-powered lantern. The soft glow revealed a simple but livable space. A cot, a crate used as a table, and a pile of supplies in one corner. It wasn't much, but it was home. Sarah stood stiffly in the middle of the room, her arms wrapped around herself, her eyes scanning the space with quiet suspicion. Ethan tossed her a bottle of water. "Drink." She caught it awkwardly, her fingers trembling. She stared at the bottle as if it were something alien. Then, cautiously, she unscrewed the cap and took a sip. The moment the water touched her throat, she gasped, nearly choking. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "When's the last time you drank clean water?" Sarah wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. Her voice was quiet. "I don't remember." Ethan didn't know why that answer bothered him. He sat on the crate and pulled a ration pack from his bag. "You should eat more," he said, tossing it to her. Sarah caught it but didn't open it. Instead, she looked down, her fingers tightening around the packet. Ethan frowned. "What?" She shook her head, her shoulders trembling. "Why?" Ethan blinked. "Why what?" She lifted her gaze, and for the first time, there was something raw in her silver eyes, something broken. "Why are you helping me?" she whispered. "I am Xelari." Ethan leaned back against the wall, arms crossed. "So?" Sarah's lips parted slightly, as if his answer confused her. "Your people hate mine. The war." "The war's over," Ethan said, his tone flat. "I don't care about it anymore." Sarah let out a bitter, shaky laugh. "Humans don't just stop hating. Not after everything we did to you." Ethan's jaw tightened. Yeah. The war had been brutal. He had lost friends, comrades, good people. He had every reason to hate her kind. But right now, she wasn't a soldier. She wasn't an enemy. She was just a starving, broken person who had been left behind. He sighed. "Look, I'm not saying we should hold hands and sing songs about peace. I'm saying that you're here, you're starving, and I'm not heartless enough to let you die. That's all." Sarah stared at him, her hands clutching the ration pack so tightly her knuckles turned pale. Then, without another word, she ripped it open and started eating. For a while, the only sound in the shelter was the quiet rustling of packaging and the soft breathing of two survivors. Then Sarah spoke again. "My own people left me behind." Her voice was hollow and empty. Ethan didn't respond. He just waited. Sarah swallowed her food and continued. "My father, he is a commander, a war leader." She looked down at her hands. When the battle turned against us, he ordered a retreat. But not for me. He called me a disgrace. Her voice wavered. He left me to die. Ethan felt something in his chest tighten. He had assumed she was just another stranded enemy. But this was different. She hadn't just been left behind by accident. She had been abandoned on purpose. He exhaled slowly. Why? Sira hesitated. Because I did not want the war. Ethan frowned. You're saying you were against it. She nodded. I spoke out. Said we should find peace instead of fighting to the death. My father called me weak. She let out a bitter chuckle. Said I was no daughter of his. Ethan stared at her, his mind racing. An alien, his enemy, had wanted peace all along. The war could have been avoided. He clenched his fists. So much death, so much suffering, for nothing. Syra's voice dropped to a whisper. I have not spoken to anyone in weeks, not until you. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, unsure what to say. He had spent so long thinking of the Xilari as monsters, but Sira, she wasn't a monster. She was just lost, alone. Finally, he sighed. Well, you're not alone anymore. Sira looked at him, her silver eyes searching his face for something. Then, for the first time, she nodded. Ethan leaned back against the wall and closed his eyes. He had no idea what he had just gotten himself into. But one thing was certain. The war wasn't truly over. Not yet. The next morning, Ethan woke up to the sound of soft footsteps. His soldier instincts kicked in, and his hand moved toward his rifle before he remembered. He wasn't alone anymore. He opened his eyes to see Sira, standing near the entrance of the shelter, staring at the dim light filtering through the cracks. She looked tense, like a cornered animal, ready to run at any moment. Ethan sat up and stretched, his body sore from sleeping on the hard ground. You planning to run? He asked, his voice rough from sleep. Sira turned her head slightly, her silver eyes unreadable. No, she said softly, but I do not understand why you are helping me. Ethan sighed, rubbing his face. She was still asking that. He wasn't sure what to tell her. Maybe he didn't even know the answer himself. Before he could reply, a distant sound reached them, one that made Ethan's blood turn cold. A low mechanical hum. Sira stiffened. Drones. Ethan was already moving, grabbing his rifle and peeking through a crack in the metal sheet covering their hideout. In the sky above the ruins, 3 black, insect-like drones hovered, their red scanning lights sweeping across the broken buildings. His heart pounded. Human patrol drones. They were looking for survivors. More importantly, they were looking for Xilari. Ethan turned to Sira. We need to move. Now. Sira nodded, but there was something troubled in her expression. Ethan pulled on his backpack and checked his ammo. Not much left. He would have to be careful. He motioned for Sira to follow, and they climbed out of the shelter, keeping low. They moved through the ruins, using the rubble as cover. The drones hummed above, scanning, searching. Ethan's grip on his rifle tightened. If they were caught, there would be no mercy. After 10 tense minutes, they reached an alleyway where Ethan had hidden an old motorbike, a beaten-up but functional machine he had repaired over the weeks. Sira hesitated. You trust this thing to work? Ethan smirked. More than I trust those drones not to fry us. He got on and motioned for her to climb behind him. She hesitated again, but when the distant sound of soldier boots crunching against rubble reached them, she grabbed his waist and held on tight. Ethan gunned the engine, and the bike roared to life, kicking up dust as they sped away. Behind them, the drones beeped in alarm. The chase was on. The hunter arrives. They weaved through the ruins, dodging broken walls and collapsed buildings. Ethan's hands were steady on the controls, his mind focused. He had done this before, escaping enemy fire, dodging death. But this time, he wasn't alone. Sira held onto him tightly, her body tense. Faster, she shouted over the wind. Ethan glanced back. The drones were gaining. Red targeting lasers flickered over the rubble, locking onto them. "Hold on," he yelled. He yanked the bike to the side, narrowly dodging a blast of plasma that scorched the ground behind them. The heat burned against his back, but he pushed forward, forcing the bike through a narrow gap between two fallen skyscrapers. The drones hesitated for a moment, recalculating their path. That gave Ethan just enough time to reach an abandoned underground tunnel ahead. He slammed the brakes, skidding to a stop. Inside, now, Sira jumped off and dashed into the tunnel. Ethan followed just as the drones arrived, their lights flashing angrily. One of them tried to follow, but the space was too narrow. It hovered outside, scanning, waiting. They were safe. For now. Ethan turned to Sira, breathing heavily. "You all right?" She nodded, but her hands were still shaking. "They found me. That means..." Ethan clenched his jaw. "They won't stop hunting you." Sira looked away. "I know." A heavy silence filled the tunnel. The reality of their situation had sunk in. She wasn't just a lost survivor. She was a target. But why? Before Ethan could ask, another sound made them freeze. A deep, inhuman growl echoed through the tunnel. Sira's eyes widened in horror. "No, it can't be." Ethan gripped his rifle, scanning the darkness. "What is it?" Then he saw them. Two tall, armored figures stepped out of the shadows, their glowing green eyes locked onto Sira. Their sleek, curved armor and sharp, blade-like weapons confirmed Ethan's worst fear. Scifi soldiers. Sira took a shaky step back. "They found me." One of the soldiers, a towering brute with black and red markings, let out a low, menacing laugh. "You thought you could escape, traitor." Ethan's mind raced. The humans wanted her dead. The Scifi wanted her dead. She had nowhere to go. And now, neither did he. Ethan raised his rifle. "Looks like we're both out of luck." The Scifi warrior grinned, stepping forward. "No, human. It is you who is out of time." The tunnel filled with the cold sound of steel being drawn. The fight was about to begin. The tunnel was silent, except for the low hum of the Scifi soldiers' weapons. Their curved blades shimmered in the dim light, crackling with energy. Ethan tightened his grip on his rifle, his heart pounding. He had fought Scifi before, but never this close. Their armor was tough, their reflexes faster than any humans. If they got within striking range, he was dead. Sira stood frozen beside him, her silver eyes wide with fear. The taller Scifi warrior, the one with red and black armor, took a step forward. His glowing green eyes locked onto Sira. "You are a disgrace to your kind," he hissed. "Did you really think you could run forever?" Sira trembled but didn't reply. Ethan raised his rifle. "She's not going anywhere with you." The second Scifi, a slimmer figure with dark blue armor, let out a sharp, cold laugh. "And who are you, human?" "A lost soldier. A fool playing hero." Ethan smirked. "Something like that." Before the Scifi could react, Ethan pulled the trigger. A sharp burst of gunfire echoed through the tunnel, the bullet slamming into the red-armored Scifi's chest. The impact sent him stumbling backward, but his armor held. Sparks flew, but the bullets didn't pierce through. Damn, Ethan had expected that. The second Scifi lunged, moving too fast for Ethan to react. A sharp blade arced toward his throat. Ethan barely dodged, falling back as the energy blade sliced through the air where his head had been. The Scifi struck again, this time aiming for his side. Then Sira moved. She grabbed a metal rod from the ground and swung it with surprising force, smashing it into the Scifi's arm. The impact wasn't enough to injure him, but it was enough to knock him off balance. Ethan took the chance. He fired point blank, aiming at the warrior's exposed neck. This time, the bullet hit flesh. The Scifi roared in pain, stumbling backward as green blood dripped from the wound. The red-armored warrior recovered and charged at Sira, his blade raised high. Ethan reacted instantly. He grabbed a small explosive charge from his belt and threw it at the auxiliary's feet. Boom! The blast wasn't strong enough to kill, but it sent the auxiliary flying backward, slamming into the tunnel wall. The tunnel shook from the impact, dust and rubble raining down from the ceiling. For a brief moment, everything was still. Then Ethan grabbed Sarah's hand. "Run." She didn't argue. They sprinted down the tunnel, their footsteps echoing in the darkness. Behind them, the wounded auxiliary roared in frustration. "They won't let us escape," Sarah panted. Ethan glanced back. She was right. The red-armored auxiliary was already back on his feet, his blade glowing brighter than before. Ethan cursed. They needed a way out. Now. Up ahead, a faint blue light glowed in the distance. An exit. Ethan pushed forward, his lungs burning. "Come on." Sarah ran beside him, her breath ragged but determined. The tunnel opened up into a large underground chamber. At the far end, an old maintenance ladder led upward to the surface. Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed the ladder and started climbing. "Go. I'll cover you." Sarah hesitated for a second, then climbed past him, moving fast despite her exhaustion. Ethan turned back, raising his rifle. The auxiliary stormed into the chamber, their eyes burning with fury. Ethan aimed and fired a final shot, not at them, but at the ceiling above them. The weakened structure gave way, sending rocks and debris crashing down. The auxiliary leaped back, avoiding the worst of the collapse, but it bought Ethan just enough time to climb the ladder. He reached the top, grabbed Sarah's arm, and pulled her onto the surface. They were outside. Night had fallen, and the stars above shone bright against the dark sky. Ethan exhaled. That was too close. Sarah looked back at the ruined tunnel entrance, her face pale. "They'll be back." Ethan nodded. "Yeah, but we'll be long gone." He turned toward the distant city ruins, where the remains of old human bases lay abandoned. It wasn't safe. Nowhere was safe. But it was their only chance. "We move now," Ethan said, "before both sides find us." Sarah looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Together, they disappeared into the ruins, hunted by both humans and Silari, but refusing to fall. The fight wasn't over yet. Ethan and Sarah moved swiftly through the ruins, their footsteps muffled by the broken ground beneath them. The night air was cold, and the distant sounds of drones and patrols filled the silence. They were being hunted, by both sides. Ethan led the way, his rifle ready, his eyes scanning the shadows. The auxiliary were tough, but he knew how human forces operated. The patrol drones would already be scanning the ruins, and it wouldn't be long before soldiers were deployed. Sarah walked closely behind him, her silver eyes flicking around the ruins. She was tense, alert. "We can't keep running forever," she whispered. Ethan sighed. She was right. They needed a plan. After a few more minutes of walking, they reached a collapsed building. It was an old human military outpost, now nothing but rubble and twisted steel. But underground, there might still be a functional bunker. Ethan knelt and brushed the dirt aside, searching for a hatch. Sarah watched him, shifting nervously. "How do you know this place?" "Used to be a soldier," Ethan replied. "Before the war ended, before the ceasefire broke down." Sarah's gaze softened. "And now?" Ethan glanced up at her. "Now I just survive." Finally, his fingers found metal, a hidden door. He pulled it open, revealing the dark passage leading underground. The air smelled of dust and old machines. "This should buy us some time," he said, motioning for Sarah to go first. She hesitated but obeyed, climbing down. Ethan followed, sealing the hatch behind them. The tunnel was narrow, lit only by faint emergency lights still flickering after all these years. Sarah shivered. "What is this place?" "An old supply bunker," Ethan said. "Might still have rations, maybe weapons." They walked cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the empty halls. The place had been abandoned for years, but Ethan knew these bunkers were built to last. Sira ran her fingers over the walls. Your people, they built this war, and now they are destroying everything. Ethan glanced at her, and the Xilari aren't. Sira flinched but didn't argue. The war had been brutal on both sides. The humans and Xilari had fought for control of the planet, both believing they had the right to claim it. When the war ended, neither side truly accepted defeat. And now, it was chaos. Sira sighed. I don't belong anywhere, Ethan. Ethan stopped walking. What do you mean? Sira hesitated before whispering. I betrayed my people. Ethan narrowed his eyes. That explained a lot. The Xilari soldiers had called her a traitor. They hadn't just been hunting her because she was weak. They wanted her dead. What did you do? He asked carefully. Sira clenched her fists. I refused to kill. Ethan blinked. That's it. She nodded. My people believe in strength. If you do not fight, you are useless. I was trained to be a warrior, but I never wanted to kill. When I refused my first mission, her voice faltered. Ethan understood. They cast her out. Guess we have something in common, he muttered. Sira looked at him. You left your people too. Ethan sighed. Not exactly. I followed orders for too long. Then one day, I realized I was just another weapon. So I walked away. Sira studied him for a moment, then gave a small, sad smile. We are both running, then. Before Ethan could reply, a beeping sound filled the air. His blood ran cold. Sira's eyes widened. What is that? Ethan grabbed her wrist. A tracker. We need to go. Now. The bunker wasn't safe. Something had triggered an alarm. They sprinted through the tunnels, searching for another exit. Then, a metallic thud. Ethan froze. From the shadows ahead, a red light flickered. A human combat drone stepped forward, its gun locking onto them. Sira gasped. They found us. The drone's voice crackled. Surrender or be terminated. Ethan raised his rifle, heart pounding. No chance. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. The red light of the combat drone flickered ominously in the dim bunker hallway. Its mechanical voice echoed through the tunnel. Surrender or be terminated. Ethan's grip on his rifle tightened. No way out. No cover. Sira stood frozen beside him, her silver eyes locked on the deadly machine. Ethan's mind raced. He had fought these drones before. Fast, precise, ruthless. Standard military programming meant it wouldn't hesitate to kill. His finger hovered over the trigger. One wrong move, and they were dead. The drone took a step forward, its gun barrel glowing blue, charging for a shot. No time. Ethan made his choice. He shoved Sira aside and dove forward, rolling as the drone fired a plasma bolt. The heat seared past his face, missing him by inches. He hit the ground and fired 3 quick shots. Bang, bang, bang. The bullets slammed into the drone's chassis, sparking on impact. But its armor held. Damn it. The drone adjusted its aim. Then, Sira moved. She grabbed a broken metal pipe from the ground and swung it with all her strength at the drone's head. Crack. The impact wasn't enough to destroy it, but it threw off its aim for a split second. Ethan took his chance. He lunged forward, yanking a combat knife from his belt and ramming it into the drone's tensor eye. Sparks flew. The drone jerked violently, its targeting system failing. Its gun fired wildly, plasma bolts scorching the walls. Ethan grabbed Sira's arm. Run. They sprinted down the tunnel as the drone malfunctioned, sparks flying from its broken eye. Behind them, a loud explosion filled the bunker, the drone's core overloading. The blast threw them forward, sending them tumbling to the ground. Ethan groaned, rolling onto his back. Dust and smoke filled the air. Sira, he coughed. I'm okay, she gasped, pushing herself up. Ethan struggled to his feet, shaking off the impact. We need to get out of here. That explosion will bring more of them. Sira nodded, her face pale but determined. They continued down the tunnel, moving as fast as their exhausted bodies would allow. No safe place. After what felt like an eternity, they reached an old maintenance ladder leading upward. Ethan climbed first, pushing against the rusted metal rungs. Every muscle in his body ached. At the top, he shoved open a heavy metal hatch, revealing the night sky. Cool air rushed in. He climbed out and pulled Sira up after him. They were outside, standing in the ruins of an abandoned human city. Crumbling skyscrapers loomed around them, their windows shattered, streets filled with debris. Sira gasped for breath. Where are we? Ethan scanned the area. This place, it was familiar. He pointed toward a distant tall building, barely standing. That used to be a supply station. If we're lucky, there might still be some resources left. Sira nodded, and they started moving. But something felt wrong. Ethan's instincts screamed at him. Something was watching them. Then, a deep guttural growl. Sira froze. Ethan turned, rifle raised. From the shadows of a collapsed building, figures emerged. Not drones. Not humans. Scifi warriors. Their green eyes glowed in the darkness, weapons gleaming under the moonlight. One of them stepped forward, a familiar figure in red and black armor. Ethan's stomach dropped. The same Scifi warrior from before. The one he had fought in the tunnels. The warrior tilted his head, his voice calm but full of menace. "You escaped before," he said. "You won't escape again." Ethan tightened his grip on his gun. Sira stepped beside him, her fists clenched. The Scifi warrior smirked. "You should have let us take the traitor. Now, you both die." Ethan took a slow breath. No running this time. No escape. It was time to fight. Ethan stood his ground, his rifle aimed at the Scifi warriors. His heart pounded, but he kept his breathing steady. This was it. Sira was beside him, her fists clenched. No fear in her eyes now. Only determination. The Scifi leader in red and black armor smirked. "You are outnumbered, human. Surrender, and maybe I will make your death quick." Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "You talk too much." Without warning, he pulled the trigger. Bang, bang, bang. The first 3 shots struck the Scifi leader's chest, but his armor absorbed the impact. He only staggered back slightly. The second Scifi warrior charge, his blade glowing with energy. Ethan barely dodged as the blade slashed through the air, cutting close enough that he felt the heat. Sira moved fast. She grabbed a piece of broken metal from the rubble and threw it at the warrior's face. It wasn't much, but it distracted him for a second. And that second was all Ethan needed. He aimed lower and fired at the Scifi's legs. The warrior roared in pain, stumbling backward. Green blood dripped onto the ground. Sira grabbed Ethan's arm. "We need to run." But Ethan shook his head. Running wouldn't work this time. The Scifi leader growled, his glowing green eyes burning with fury. "You think you can defeat us?" he hissed. Ethan's grip tightened on his rifle. Not alone. The Scifi leader tilted his head. "What do you?" Then, a loud whirring sound filled the air. The ground shook as a combat drone hovered over the ruins, its red targeting laser scanning the Scifi. Ethan smirked. "I figured the humans would send more drones after us." The Scifi warriors turned to the sky, realizing too late. They were exposed. The drone's robotic voice echoed. "Unauthorized Scifi detected. Engaging." A second later, it opened fire. Bright blue plasma bolts rained down on the Scifi warriors. The leader roared in frustration, dodging and weaving through the attack. "Fall back," he ordered. But it was too late for one of his soldiers. A plasma bolt struck the wounded Scifi in the chest, sending him crashing to the ground, motionless. Ethan grabbed Sira's wrist. "Now we run." They sprinted through the ruins as the battle unfolded behind them. The Xilari warriors tried to retreat, but the drone chased them down. Ethan and Sira didn't look back. They ran through the dark streets, dodging rubble and broken structures, their bodies exhausted but their will to survive stronger than ever. A new beginning. After running for what felt like hours, they finally stopped near the edge of the ruined city. The sky was beginning to brighten. Morning was coming. Sira collapsed onto a broken concrete slab, breathing heavily. "Are we safe?" Ethan leaned against a wall, scanning the area. "For now." She looked up at him. "Why did you stay? You could have left me." Ethan exhaled. "I don't leave people behind." Sira smiled softly. Ethan sat beside her, his muscles aching. The night had been brutal. He had fought Xilari, dodged drones, and barely escaped with his life. And yet, he didn't regret a thing. Sira looked at the rising sun. What now? Ethan thought for a moment. The war had made them both outcasts, hunted by both humans and Xilari. But that didn't mean they had to stop fighting. He looked at Sira and smirked. "We find a way to survive. Together." She nodded. The war wasn't over. The fight wasn't over. But they weren't running anymore. They were fighting for their future.